What's up, guys? Somebody's Gone here. Gonna be doing a POI analysis on the new location at the center of the map. It's called the Convergence or Cube Town, whatever you want to call it. The advantages, the disadvantages, and what you need to know if you're gonna be landing here. So let's get right to it. First, I want to explain that I'm not going to be looking a lot at the physical structures of Cube Town. This is because HypeX tweeted that there's going to be 18 different stages of this, so it's going to be pretty consistently changing. And if we look at the changes, we can't exactly tell what they're going to be, but we can see significant changes from beginning to end of Cube Town. So let's focus on what is there and what's around instead of simply what are the structures. There are well over 100 floor spawns that are going to be all across the Cube Town. Now, when I've tried to loot this, I've found they're a little difficult to get at first, but after landing there, you should be able to find a fairly quick route. The chests are not as plentiful as the floor spawns, but there's still a significant number of chests. I believe 32 is what is here, although that number could change over time as we see the POI change. And another thing to point out is that there's nothing that is farmable within this area. So you're going to be able to get the loot and the floor spawns for materials, but outside of that, you literally will have no materials inside of this area. So this begs the question as to where you're going to find materials. The brick, the wood is plentiful right outside of the area. All you have to do is escape the actual Cube Town, and you should easily be able to max your wood and brick. Now, the metal is going to be much more difficult to find, and there's really only 3 locations where you can get any kind of significant amounts of metal. One are going to be the bridge in between Pleasant and Boney. Second is going to be the old Dusty Divot. And lastly is going to be the IO base to the south on the mountains. You could go all the way up north to the bridge in between Craggy and Pleasant, but really not an option for most zones that aren't pulling north. Outside of the materials, the overall vision that you're going to get by posting up on these locations in Cube Town are going to give you really good spots for surge damage. Reminds me a lot of the old Spire that used to be here. Obviously not as high, but still the same idea as a tall position in the middle of the map that's going to give you vision around the entire area. Okay, now let's talk about the actual POI. So as I ran around here and kind of just tested things to see exactly how this goes, the floor spawn loots are somewhat spread out. It's not, to the best of my knowledge, a place where you can just land and get a bunch of loot in one single location. Additionally, some of the places are inaccessible without materials, so you're going to need to make sure you have mats. Now we can see that this darker purple place is like a bounce pad and it shoots you around. It's going to be a quick way to travel around this and increase your looting speed. So when you're here, you're going to be able to loot faster. Then there's also these brighter pink pads that will bounce you around. There's some that don't work, which doesn't really make sense to me. I haven't been able to figure out what one that works looks like and one that doesn't. It just kind of seems to be hit or miss for me. These are probably things that will change over time as the POI changes, much like we talked about in the beginning of the video. But either way, it's good to know if you're landing here which ones work and which don't. And it's also going to be a great idea to create a loot path, knowing I have X amount of chests and I don't have enough loot to build up to X or Y location. I also found a harpoon was super helpful when landing here to loot faster because of all the floor spawns. You don't have to move and physically pick everything up. And you can also see I'm trying to hit these things, but obviously you cannot hit these things. There's just no farming of any of the purple within Cube Town, and there's nothing besides the actual chests that you can farm, which aren't going to give you much. So keep that in mind when you're going here. Understand your path. Understand you're going to have very minimal materials. This might be a situation where you wind up getting pushed from some nearby splits or Boney or some other nearby areas because players know you're going to have very little materials. So if you're landing here and this is your primary loot location, make sure you're figuring out a way where at least one of your teammates, if not all of you guys, can quickly grab some loot, move outside of this, and then grab necessary materials or just have one person post up at the top of this. That way you can just chill up top, let your teammates know what's going on, and they will have that information. But when you're down in the pits here, it's very easy to not realize what's going on around you. I just was testing this out, trying to figure out if there's anything to gain where you're going to be able to get shield from certain cubes or anything like that. Turns out the answer is no, at least not in this iteration of the current cube. One thing that I found pleasing though at the cube was the builds, and the build structure places very nicely with actual builds. So it's one of the few places where I feel like you're not going to run into issues placing builds into the ground. But another thing to note is that even if you're not landing here, you should understand exactly how Cube Town works, because likely zones are going to pull through here, and if you aren't understanding of what's going on, you're going to fall behind. You're going to struggle when an endgame does eventually pull into this area. One last small note, and I don't know for 100% certainty this is true, but 2 out of 2 games I found a crow and was able to get that extra loot upgrade. I don't know if this is true or it just happened to be that way the 2 games I played, but something to keep in mind. That's all I got for you guys in this video. Overall, I think Cube Town is going to be a great place to land to get strong loot, but it's going to be very weak material, so it should be considered part of a split and not simply a POI on itself where you want to land in trios. In solos, I feel like this is going to be chaotic, especially in solo cash cups, so my advice would be to not land here, but that's up to you guys. I can't tell you what to do. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. My name's Somebody's Gun. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.